Now give me the beat.
2019 is shaping up to be a fantastic year for gaming. Rage 2, Metro Exodus, Final Fantasy XIV's new expansion, Shadowbringers, WoW Classic, 8.1.5 and 8.2 for BFA, the potential release of the game based off the book Shadow over Innsmouth, Anthem. 2018 seems to have been the lull year because by comparison in the field of FPS, RPG, and story-driven games, 2019 is shaping up to knock the fucking socks off people. But let's back up a bit. Let's come back to the current year of 2018. Because we have a certain young daughter of a dangerous psychotic tyrant to discuss. Of course, I mean Orphea, heir to the Raven Court and daughter of the Raven Lord. So, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this video, let's talk about the reaction to her announcement. I mean, it was better than Diablo Immortal! No, but seriously, some people were extremely excited for the first hero in the mega crossover game that is Heroes of the Storm, who actually comes from Heroes of the Storm, not from Warcraft or Diablo or Starcraft or even Overwatch. Orphea began her life in Heroes of the Storm, part of a tumultuous and difficult life we can dive deep into in the next few minutes. Because Orphea was about 50-50. Some people loved the idea of the game's first unique hero not to be essentially copied from another Blizzard IP, and others were annoyed, frustrated that this new character stole the spotlight of potential announcements like Bale, or Selendis, or even Deathwing. Just be like Elsa, let it go! Deathwing's not coming to Heroes of the Storm, he's too big! Or is he? The fans who dislike the idea of Orphea taking the spot from some of Blizzard's most iconic heroes and villains have the right to be frustrated. But as always, more heroes are on the way, and for once, it's nice to see them doing something wholly unique. So, accompanying Orphea was a spread of 4 comic issues where we went into detail about some of the events in the Nexus, as well as her relationship with her dear old dad, who, as it turns out, has gone off the deep end and become a psychopathic tyrant! Who knew? You see, as it turns out, the Raven Lord sensed some unspeakable emanating from somewhere across the Nexus, and he decided to release the Dark Nexus, a mirror unspeakable evil who was kept in prison for thousands of years. So as all things go, when you unleash something that's generally evil, the Dark Nexus corrupted the Raven Lord, and as such, he set the power loose on other realms, namely the Gravekeepers and places like the Dragon Shrine. The Dark Nexus tore through the realms, sowing chaos and disorder, and upon learning of her husband's desire to unleash it as a sort of lesser of two evils, Orphea's mother left them both. And when Orphea learned of why her mother left, so too did she. Left to his own devices, the Raven Lord fell into a state of insanity, which eventually culminated in Orphea's growing disgusted by her father's actions in regard to the Dark Nexus, setting out to make things right, taking with her a shard of the same dark power her father had been corrupted by, using it to shatter the stone that gave him so much strength, banishing him from his own realm in issue 4 of the comics. This has led to a lot of confusion by some people, as it's essentially she did this thing, which we know nothing about, to stop this thing, which we know nothing about, to save the Nexus from a threat we know nothing about. I mean, as far as lore goes, Heroes of the Storm has a more cohesive story than League of Legends, where you're essentially some super powerful mage who enlists the service of some super badass heroes and villains to beat the shit out of each other because Bloodsport, I guess? Yeah, come to think of it, that has almost no semblance of sense either, but it's fine! MOBAs are first and foremost, of course, a source of entertainment. Lore and story building can come afterwards. The problem, however, with the comics is the fact that Orphea, a little small, scrawny, super powerful mage, managed to banish one of the most powerful forces in the Nexus. A super-powered Raven Lord, who is a Realm Lord, gods in their own right. Okay, well, no, actually, they're more like Daedric Princes, but Daedric Princes are also gods, so I'm gonna go with the fact that they're like Daedric Princes. They create their own pocket realms that basically are a mirror image of their own personality. You know, like, for example, Veramina's realm of Quagmire is all about nightmares. The realm of the Gravekeeper is all about skeletons and graveyards and death. Makes sense. Well, the problem with the outcry against Orphea essentially being one of the most overpowered heroes in the lore is that she used her family's ancestral power, or the coffins, to help her fight her father. And then while her father was distracted, she used that shard of the Dark Nexus to destroy the locus of power her father became so obsessive over. using a sliver of the evil to destroy the evil itself, and that only really banished him from his own realm. She's more on the same power scale as the player character in World of Warcraft. She's done some pretty notable stuff, like, for example, stopping a man hell-bent on bringing all of the in-game universe to kneel, much like we helped imprison the Lord of the Burning Legion at the end of last expansion. If anything, to compare her to someone of Heroes of the Storm's roster, she's more akin to Zeratul or Kerrigan, being incredibly powerful, but also not so tough as to be immortal. Also, speaking of the 4th comic, we saw that she can be wounded when she got bit by a Nexus dog, and it led to some pretty bad issues as far as blood loss is concerned. Now, gameplay-wise, she's interesting. She's sort of like Chromie mixed with Tracer. She's super strong unless she misses an ability. She's super mobile if she can land her Q, and if she talents for it, lands her W. But if she misses an ability, she can easily be dealt with, because her real strength comes from her Q, Shadow Waltz, a super narrow line skill shot, which, if you're paying attention, you can actually bait. The width of the ability is not terrible, but it's also not wide enough that you can't get out of it. And if she manages to miss, well, there goes her ability to dash afterwards. Her biggest weakness, however, comes from her 2 ultimates, Eternal Feast and Crushing Jaws. Eternal Feast is a fairly large AoE which summons Chomp, her little toothy void friend, out of her coffin, to bombard an area 1 time. If it hits a hero, Chomp does it again. And again. And again. As long as someone on the enemy team stands in the AoE, Chomp will continue to take a bite out of the enemy team. So how do you counter that? How do you counter something that's that strong? Well, Chomp only does it as long as an enemy hero's in the AoE. So just don't stand in it. His wind-up's notable, as it's fairly obvious when you see a gigantic purple or pink blob getting ready to bite down on an area instead of a giant circle on the ground. And speaking of warnings on the ground, Orphea's 2nd ultimate, Crushing Jaws, suffers from the same issue, only Crushing Jaws is a wee bit different. You throw down Crushing Jaws and a little rectangular area of effect will appear. Chomp will burrow under the ground, spread to the 2 edges of the rectangle, turn into 2 giant spiky walls, and collapse in on the center, grabbing anyone in the AoE and slamming them between the 2 walls like it's some kind of really morbid Sub-Zero fatality. It stuns the targets for a second, and again, this is where Orphea not having a CC-oriented team can hurt her, because as long as the enemy can get out of the way, and as long as they know what to look for, Crushing Jaws can be easily avoided. In this regard, I would say Orphea has one key aspect that's shared with Chromie, and it's leading your target and anticipating the enemy's movements, whereas if you're on the opposing team, anticipating where she's going to try and hit you. Orphea's kit is built around her being mobile and landing skills like no tomorrow, but all of her abilities revolve around some sort of delay before they hit, meaning you really have to be paying attention to the enemy team and where they're going, and also anticipating jukes. Overall, I think her lore ties into the game quite nicely. She has a motivation to protect the innocent and the weak from the tyrannical and the evil. She plays well, and she can be baited into using skills to leave herself vulnerable. But, at the same time, the good Orphea can also anticipate the movement of her enemy and act accordingly. However, in the long run, she does suffer without at least one person on her team having some sort of meaningful CC, like Butcher, Zool, Artanis, Uther, or Gazlo as some examples. And one more thing. So far I've only mentioned Orphea, but I feel it's important to mention some of the other changes that are coming now that Orphea's been released. You see, Heroes of the Storm suffers from a key issue: matchmaking problems. I know pretty much everyone has suffered this at some point. You go into a match, you queue up in quick match, and you get 3 assassins, 1 specialist, and a healer. You have no front line whatsoever. You'll see some key examples on screen right now. This has made the game quite frustrating for a lot of people because it's essentially a roll of the dice. Are you going to be paired up against someone who can absolutely wreck your shit? Like, for example, Orphea going up against people like Tracer, Li Ming, Jaina, Butcher, and Diablo? People who can absolutely outrange and CC the shit out of her? Is it like me when I play Zeratul and I find I'm going up against Artanis and Butcher, the former of which is one of the strongest duelists in the entire game? It's not a fun experience, having to roll the dice. We've seen that in things like World of Warcraft as well. People don't generally like rolling the dice to decide whether or not they have fun. Thankfully, the Heroes of the Storm devs understand. Coming soon, we're going to have some pretty meaningful matchmaking changes. It might take a little longer to get a match, but every match will have at least 1 tank, 1 healer, and 1 assassin, the other 2 slots being fill. This should hopefully combat a lot of the issues people of all skill types have had when they go into quick match. On top of this, they're also changing how role select works. So currently, when you go in and you pull up your hero roster, you have a few notable roles: warriors, assassins, supports, and specialists. With the changes, instead of having a warrior, you have a tank and a bruiser. Tanks being the high health juggernauts. Think people like Diablo or Stitches. And bruisers being the tanky damage dealers, people like Sonya. Specialists have changed. In fact, specialist is no longer even a role. Specialists who once bolstered their allies, people like Abathur or Medivh, have become supports. Now granted, that's been rolled in with a lot of other characters who essentially just boost their allies through other ways than the new healer role for people like Sally Whitemane, Ana, Uther, Alexstrasza, the core healers. As for the specialists who are more damage-oriented, people like Azmodan, Sergeant Hammer, and Nazebo, they've been moved into the assassin category, which in and of itself has been turned upside down because now we have a very simple change to assassin, 2 roles, melee assassin, and ranged assassin. I don't really need to explain that one, I don't think. On top of that, they have said that if your team has a role that needs to be filled, for example, say, there's not a whole lot of tanks, there's a whole lot of bruisers, but not a whole lot of tanks, you'll actually get an XP gain or an XP boost if you roll a tank, just to help out the entire player base overall. They have, coming in December, some reworks for Stitches. They're going to examine his hero fantasy. Obviously, he's going to be a tank and no longer part of the warrior role because that's being split in 2, so they're going to have to look at how he plays, and they're going to have to decide how to actually make him fit the role of a tank and not a bruiser. They talked about wanting to keep Hook as awesome as it currently is, while also bringing every other ability up to the same level of awesomeness. One of the most important questions was, where does everyone's favorite Banshee fit in? Obviously right now Sylvanas is a specialist, but with the change in roles, where is she going to fit in? She's not really an assassin, but she's also not really a lane pusher. She's kind of a mix of both. As such, they want to examine her hero fantasy. They want to make her an epic ranged assassin. They want to preserve the existing fantasy in some form, while still giving people more choice. They also said they want to keep Black Arrow as a thing, because Black Arrow is fun. Also, we have some core gameplay changes that are going to take effect in December, I assume. So forts and keeps will no longer be worth any XP. Towers are going to be worth half XP. They're going to increase the XP trickle you get by 15%, and minion XP is going to be increased by 100%. So XP from minions is going to be worth double. You're going to be incentivized to actually split instead of going for the whole 5-man down one lane thing at the very start and then splitting off to push lanes. You're going to be incentivized to push lanes a lot earlier. So now that forts and keeps no longer give XP, they've also decided to change how catapults work. Because right now how it works is forts give you nothing, except a little bit of XP, and keeps are the things that spawn your catapults. They're changing this so that every fort gives a catapult instead of every keep, and it's every third wave instead of every wave. Now the fun thing about this is that it incentivizes players to want to push early game. It incentivizes you to actually want to take part in the MOBA style of the game, pushing the towers and pushing the forts to get your early game advantage. Now don't worry, catapults are going to get better. Their size of their attack area is going to get bigger, their damage is going to get higher, their hit points are going to increase as the game progresses. We also have one big thing regarding armor types. They're removing the effect of armor stacking. Essentially, Mal'Ganis could gain 25 armor off of his Necrotic Embrace, while also getting the damage reduction from Safeguard with its 25 armor. Now it's essentially just either Necrotic Embrace or Safeguard. He's not going to have 50 armor, he's not going to take half damage. He's already tanky enough as it is. They're also making a change so that all armor types will show at all times. So say if Mal'Ganis has 25 armor, it's going to show for both teams all the time, as long as he has Necrotic Embrace up. Kind of a nice change. They're also making it so that spell armor has a different icon than physical armor. It actually has a pretty key difference, if you ask me. On top of all of this exciting news, we have one thing for the people who like a little bit of competition. Hero League and Team League are being combined, while also allowing people to look for other solo queuers. So essentially how it works right now is Hero League is for people who want to queue solo, and Team League is for people who want to queue with group. In combining the two, they also want to make sure that people who queue as solo only find people who also queue solo, so that you don't go being a group of 5 solo queuers against a pre-made, because that's, well, it's never fun. In a ranked match, because this is a big thing for both Overwatch and Heroes of the Storm, in Heroes of the Storm's case, if a player leaves a ranked match, the losers will not lose rank or MMR. And the leaver, and leavers in general, will see a stacking penalty that will get worse the more games they leave. Now, they also mentioned they're working on something because they understand that, sometimes life happens. Family, kids, maybe a bad internet connection, maybe the power goes out. They're working on something to kind of understand and figure out whether or not that is the case, which is nice to see. They're also reducing placement games from 10 to 3, and on top of that, they're introducing a new quest line that requires people to play a certain number of games to get the end of season rewards. So the gold, the mount, the portrait, and things like that. So on top of all of this, there is still one more thing. Well, two more things, actually. One of the most annoying things is when you're winning, you're right on the cusp of the next league. So let's say you're right on the cusp of platinum or diamond, and you have a promotion match to win. If you don't win this promotion match, you're gonna have to work your way back up to that promotion match. If you do win it, you go up to the next rank or the next league. Same with demotion matches. You've been losing a lot, and this is your one chance to scrape it back. If you lose, you get demoted. If you win, you can start clawing your way back up. It's not a fun feeling. Apparently, Heroes of the Storm's team understands that. That's why the demotion and promotion system is out of here. It's out of here! It's gone! Thank God. Speaking of this, they said that the MMR system is replacing the ranked point system, which is completely gone as well. MMR is going to be displayed somewhere on your profile, maybe in the loading screen, I don't know. And it will also increase in a similar fashion to how your rank points did. By the way, for those of you who don't play Heroes of the Storm, MMR is essentially your matchmaking rating. It determines who you get paired with. The higher your matchmaking, the more likely you're going to see people who are of a higher skill level. So, finally, coming back full circle to Orphea. The people who hate Orphea because she dared to take the spotlight from a Prime or Lesser Evil or some other notable characters. Just remember that it took us forever to even get Mephisto or Mal'Ganis. In time, I'm sure we'll see the Lord of Destruction, or the Dragon Aspect of Death, or even the Rogue Xel'Naga, Amon. In all good things, patience is a virtue that's often discarded first, giving way to the frustrating wait for something iconic. We'll get all the cool and desired heroes eventually. I mean, you have to keep in mind that they have to design the concept art, they have to work on the model articulation, the lore, the abilities, the skins, the voice lines and dances, the taunts and the laughs, the announcer lines. It takes a good amount of time to make a new hero. Even if it's one from another IP and it's just converting that to a hero's format, it can take a few months. Also keep in mind that the team generally alternates between reworking current heroes and releasing new ones. One last thing before we go, which I'm sure is going to make some people very happy. The team has in the works Party Finder and clans, but it's at a slower speed compared to everything else, because obviously clans don't matter as much as reworking old heroes to make them more fun and releasing new heroes. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been your humble hostess, Aubrey from Evernoth Gaming. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of Heroes of the Storm's newest edition with Orphea, heir of the Raven Court and daughter of the Raven Lord. And who do you think is going to be the next hero to be announced? I mean, from a current IP, obviously. Leave a like and subscribe if you're new here. I'll see you all next time.